Well, hello everyone. It's Pastor Smith again, and it's Tuesday, so it must be time for a devotion. And we are in Nehemiah, chapters 10 and 11. Now, because I'm a pastor, I will never, ever publicly say that chapters in the Bible are boring. But if you said to me, Pastor, I think some of these chapters toward the end of Nehemiah are kind of boring, I would not disagree with you. See, there's a difference there. But I think in these chapters, and what I'm getting at is there's a lot of lists of names of people. Not genealogies, but not a whole lot different than those things. But there are some really cool things going on behind the scenes here. So Nehemiah, just a very entertaining book just on its own right. If you missed the pastor's Bible study that Pastor Bugler and I did on the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, more specifically focused on Nehemiah from last week, you can find that on our website. You can find it on Facebook. You can even find it on YouTube too. It's hard to get away from these Bible studies sometimes, but check that out because we do a more thorough dive into what's going on in the book of Nehemiah. But here today, chapters 10 and 11, we have basically the people have just gone through rereading the law, the books of Moses, everything that God requires of them in the covenant, and then praying a prayer of confession over their own sins and the sins of their ancestors, and now recommitting themselves to the terms of the covenant, basically renewing their vows with God. And so we have lists of people, sealing the covenant. We have the obligations of the covenant, and we have this rededication to the faith. It's kind of a spiritual renewal. And then we have, in chapter 11, we have people, they're casting lots to see who's going to live in Jerusalem. This is not that they've just rebuilt the wall and the gate and everything, but it's still not many people are in there. It's still not as fortified as maybe they would like, and so they're casting lots. 1 out of every 10 people are going to be chosen randomly to go and populate the city and start to rebuild it more properly. And then other people get chosen to live in villages outside, kind of in the surrounding area. But they're starting to do this new thing of moving back in and repopulating the promised land. And so a couple things stand out to me here from these chapters. One is we just see, God is an orderly God, and so we see his people organizing themselves in good order. We see them, it's sort of like it's a brand new nation again. It reminds me of people coming over on the Mayflower, and they're forming this new community in this new world, and they're all signing their names to documents and agreeing upon laws and ways that they're going to relate to one another in this new land. That's kind of what I see this again. They're not making new stuff up, but they are recommitting themselves to the old, which is new for them because Israel has not been following these things very well at all for the last few generations. Well, since forever ago, right? But we see that, and we see also just God calling people into new roles. I think that probably the people that were selected to live in Jerusalem might have been a little more nervous, like, I don't know how this is going to go. Maybe it's a little more dangerous than we like. There's still a bunch of Persians and their cronies around. What's going to happen exactly? So it's also kind of stepping out in faith into something new, but being very intentional about it. And so I think we can learn some things about that for our own lives, trying to have good order and being intentional with how we follow God and how we grow in our relationship with him. Maybe that looks a little bit different for those of us, whether we're living by ourselves, whether it's more of an individual thing, whether we have big families and we're trying to do this for our children, or somewhere in between, depending on your stage of life. But we want to be orderly. We want to be intentional. We want to trust God that when we start something new and try to follow him more closely, more deeply, that he will be with us and that he will bless us. And the book of Nehemiah is awesome for that. God's people doing new things, kind of going back to the basics of what it means to be a follower of God. So I pray that you will be blessed here as you finish off today and then tomorrow the final few chapters of the book of Nehemiah. And guys, we're getting close. We're getting through this Old Testament we're going to see Jesus. We've heard about him a lot, but we're getting pretty close. So stick with us through this Read Scripture Challenge, and you will be blessed. We'll talk to you again soon.